Maya pulled her backpack straps tighter as she stood in front of Lincoln High School. The red brick building looked just like every other school she'd attended, but that didn't make walking through those front doors any easier. This was her fourth school in 6 years, and she knew the drill by now. Keep your head down, don't stand out, and maybe you'll make it through without any drama. Her dad had gotten another military assignment, which meant packing up their entire life once again. Maya understood it was part of military life, but that didn't make it hurt any less when she had to say goodbye to friends she'd finally gotten close to. At 17, she was tired of starting over, tired of being the outsider, and tired of explaining why she moved so much. The hallways buzzed with energy that only came from teenagers who had known each other for years. Groups of friends walked together, laughing about inside jokes and weekend plans. Maya recognized the familiar scene, the athletes with their letter jackets, the theater kids dramatically discussing their latest production, and the academic stars comparing notes from last night's homework. She found her locker and fumbled with the combination the office had given her. Behind her, she could hear whispered conversations and feel curious eyes checking out the new girl. Maya had learned to tune out the stares, but she still felt that familiar knot in her stomach that came with being somewhere she didn't belong. Her first class was English, and Maya slipped into an empty seat near the back. The teacher, Mrs. Williams, seemed nice enough and didn't make a big deal about introducing her to the class. Maya appreciated that. Nothing was worse than being forced to stand up and tell everyone about yourself on your first day. During the lesson about character development in novels, Maya found herself actually engaged. Mrs. Williams asked thoughtful questions that made the students think deeper about the character's motivations. When she called on Maya to share her thoughts about why a character made a particular choice, Maya gave a thoughtful answer that impressed both the teacher and her classmates. "That's an excellent observation," Mrs. Williams said with a genuine smile. "You picked up on something many students miss on their first reading." Maya felt a small spark of hope. Maybe this school would be different. Maybe she could find her place here without all the usual complications that came with being new. But as she walked to her next class, she noticed something that made her stomach sink. A group of girls near the lockers had stopped talking when she passed. One of them, a blonde girl with perfectly styled hair and expensive clothes, looked Maya up and down with the kind of calculating stare Maya knew all too well. This girl was clearly someone important in the school's social structure, and she was already forming opinions about the new student. Lunchtime was always the hardest part of being new. Maya grabbed a tray and looked around the cafeteria, trying to figure out where she could sit without causing problems. Every table seemed to have its own invisible barrier, marking territory that belonged to specific groups. She spotted an empty table in the corner and made her way over, grateful to have found a safe spot. As she unpacked her lunch, Maya observed the cafeteria dynamics. The blonde girl from earlier was holding court at a large table in the center of the room. Other students seemed to orbit around her group, clearly hoping for approval or invitation to join their circle. Maya pulled out her history textbook and started reading while she ate. She'd learned that staying busy made her look less lonely and gave her something to focus on besides the fact that she was eating alone. Plus, she was actually behind in this class and needed to catch up on the material they'd covered before she arrived. "Is this seat taken?" Maya looked up to see a girl with dark curly hair and paint-stained fingers standing next to her table. The girl seemed genuinely friendly, not like she was approaching Maya out of pity. "No, go ahead," Maya said. Closing her book, "I'm Riley," the girl said, settling into the chair across from Maya. "You're the new girl, right? I saw you in our class earlier." "Yeah, I'm Maya, thanks for, sitting here," Riley laughed. "Trust me, I know what it's like to feel out of place. I've been going to school with most of these people since kindergarten, and I still don't fit in with the popular crowd." Maya felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. Riley seemed real in a way that was refreshing after a morning of careful politeness from teachers and curious stares from classmates. "So what's your story?" Riley asked, unwrapping her sandwich. "Military family?" "How did you know?" "Lucky guess. We get a lot of military kids here because of the base nearby. Plus you have that look." "What look?" "Like you're used to adapting quickly, but you're tired of having to do it." Maya was surprised by how accurately Riley had read her situation. "Yeah, that's pretty much it. My dad got reassigned here, so here we are. Well, for what it's worth, this isn't the worst school you could end up at. Most of the teachers are decent, And once you figure out who to avoid, it's not too bad. Maya glanced toward the popular table where the blonde girl was laughing loudly at something one of her friends had said. Let me guess, avoid her? Riley followed her gaze and nodded. Jessica Chen. She's not necessarily mean, but she's complicated. Her group kind of sets the tone for a lot of the social stuff here. They're not bullies exactly, but they definitely have opinions about who belongs and who doesn't. Good to know, Maya said, making a mental note to stay off Jessica's radar. The rest of lunch passed quickly, and Maya found herself feeling more optimistic about her chances at Lincoln High. Riley seemed like someone she could actually be friends with, and most of her teachers appeared competent and fair. Her afternoon classes went smoothly. In chemistry, she was relieved to discover that her previous school had actually been ahead in the curriculum, so she understood everything the teacher covered. In gym class, she kept to herself during volleyball, playing well enough to avoid attention, but not so well that she stood out. As Maya walked to her final class of the day, she overheard a conversation that made her pause. Two girls were talking about weekend plans, and one mentioned that Jessica was having a party on Saturday. Are you going? The first girl asked. I don't know if I'm invited. Jessica's been kind of weird lately about who she includes. Tell me about it. Ever since that thing with Lauren over the summer, she's been really picky about her guest list. Maya didn't know who Lauren was or what had happened over the summer, but the conversation gave her insight into the complex social dynamics she'd walked into. It seemed like even established students were worried about their standing with Jessica's group. By the time the final bell rang, Maya felt cautiously optimistic about her first day. She'd managed to avoid any major social disasters, found one potential friend, and gotten a sense of how the school operated. As she walked toward the parking lot where her mom would pick her up, Maya reflected on what she'd learned. Lincoln High wasn't that different from her other schools. There were the same types of groups, the same unspoken rules, and the same careful balance she'd have to maintain between fitting in and staying true to herself. What Maya didn't realize as she climbed into her mom's car was that she'd already caught the attention of several students, including Jessica Chen. Her performance in English class, her quiet confidence, and even her choice to sit alone at lunch had been noticed and discussed. The next few weeks would test everything Maya had learned about navigating new schools, and she'd discover that sometimes staying invisible wasn't enough to avoid getting caught up in drama she never asked for. 3 weeks had passed since Maya started at Lincoln High, and she thought she'd found her rhythm. She kept her routine simple: arrive early to avoid the hallway crowds, eat lunch with Riley when their schedules matched, and focus on her studies. Her grades were solid. She'd avoided any major social problems, and her parents seemed relieved that this transition was going more smoothly than usual. But Maya didn't realize that her quiet approach to school life was being misinterpreted by some of her classmates. It started on a Wednesday morning in chemistry class. Maya had been working steadily through the semester's assignments, and when Mr. Peterson handed back their latest test, she was pleased to see an A+ at the top of her paper. She glanced around and noticed that several other students looked frustrated with their grades. Nice work, Maya, Mr. Peterson said as he placed her test on her desk. You clearly have a strong foundation in chemistry. Maya smiled and quietly put the test in her folder. She didn't notice Jessica Chen, who sat 2 rows behind her, watching the interaction with narrowed eyes. Jessica had gotten a B on the same test, and seeing the new girl effortlessly outperform her was irritating. During lunch that day, Maya was reading in the library instead of eating in the cafeteria. She'd brought a sandwich from home and wanted to catch up on her English reading. Riley found her there and slid into the chair across from her. Why are you hiding in here? Riley asked, unwrapping her lunch. I'm not hiding, Maya said, looking up from her book. I just wanted some quiet time to read. The cafeteria gets pretty loud. Fair enough, but you know some people might think you're being antisocial. Maya frowned. What do you mean? I heard some girls talking in art class. They think you act like you're better than everyone else. That's ridiculous, Maya said, closing her book. I've barely talked to anyone except you and a few people in my classes. I know that, and you know that, but rumors don't need facts to spread. Maya felt that familiar sinking feeling in her stomach. She'd hoped that keeping a low profile would help her avoid drama, but somehow she'd managed to create problems anyway. The situation got worse later that week when their English teacher, Mrs. Williams assigned group projects for their upcoming unit on American literature. Maya found herself grouped with 3 other students. Tyler, who seemed nice but quiet, Brooke, who was friends with Jessica's circle, and Chris, who was more interested in his phone than schoolwork. During their first group meeting, Maya tried to be helpful by suggesting they divide the work based on everyone's strengths. She'd done plenty of group projects at other schools and had learned that organization was key to getting good grades. "I could handle the research portion," Maya offered. "I'm pretty good at finding sources." "Oh, so you're just going to do all the important stuff yourself?" Brooke said with an edge to her voice. Maya was confused. "No, I just meant I could take that part if no one else wants it. We still need someone to handle the presentation, someone to work on the bibliography, and someone to put together the final report." "Right. And you'll probably want to check everyone's work to make sure it meets your standards," Brooke continued. Tyler looked uncomfortable, and Chris finally looked up from his phone, sensing tension in the group. "I don't understand what I said wrong," Maya said carefully. "I was just trying to organize our project so we all get a good grade." "That's exactly the problem," Brooke said. "You assume we can't handle getting good grades without your help?" Maya felt heat rising in her cheeks. This was exactly the kind of misunderstanding she'd been trying to avoid. "That's not what I meant at all. I was just—" "Look, new girl," Brooke interrupted. "I don't know how things worked at your old school, but here we don't need someone swooping in to save us from ourselves." The meeting ended awkwardly, with work assignments half finished and tension thick in the air. Maya left feeling frustrated and confused. She'd been trying to be a good group member, but somehow that had been twisted into something negative. Over the next few days, Maya noticed that the atmosphere around her was changing. Conversations seemed to stop when she walked by, and she caught more stares and whispered comments. In her history class, when she raised her hand to answer a question about World War II, a topic she knew well because of her father's military background, she heard someone mutter "show off" under their breath. The breaking point came during lunch on Friday. Maya was sitting with Riley discussing their weekend plans when Jessica Chen approached their table with 2 of her friends, Brooke and a girl named Caitlin. "Maya, right?" Jessica said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I've been meaning to introduce myself." "I'm Jessica." "Hi," Maya said cautiously. "So I heard you're really smart," Jessica continued. "Like really smart?" "Getting the highest grades in chemistry, organizing everyone's group projects, that kind of thing." Maya glanced at Riley, who looked worried. "I just try to do well in school." "Of course you do," Jessica said. "It's great that you're so dedicated. But you know, some people are starting to wonder if you think the rest of us are stupid." "I don't think that at all," Maya said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Really? Because Brooke told me about your group project meeting. Sounds like you had some pretty strong opinions about how things should be done." Maya looked at Brooke, who avoided eye contact. "I was just trying to help organize the work." "Right," Jessica said, "because obviously we couldn't figure it out ourselves." "That's not what I said." "Maybe not in those exact words," Jessica continued, "but the message was pretty clear. You come in here, ace all your tests, and start telling everyone how to do their projects better. It kind of sends a signal, don't you think?" Maya felt trapped. Anything she said would probably be twisted around and used against her. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." "Has there?" Jessica asked. "Or maybe you're just used to being the smartest person in the room at your old schools, and you're having trouble adjusting to the fact that there are plenty of smart people here too." Riley finally spoke up. "Jessica, that's not fair. Maya hasn't done anything wrong. I wasn't talking to you." "Riley," Jessica said without looking away from Maya, "I'm just having a friendly conversation with our new classmate about fitting in." The word fitting hung in the air like a threat. Maya understood exactly what Jessica was really saying. Conform to our expectations, or face the consequences. "I appreciate your concern," Maya said carefully, "but I think you've misunderstood my intentions." "Maybe," Jessica said with that same cold smile. "But intentions don't really matter if people are getting the wrong impression, do they?" After Jessica and her friends walked away, Riley looked at Maya with sympathy. "That was not good. What just happened?" Maya asked, still processing the confrontation. "You just got warned by the unofficial queen of Lincoln High," Riley said. "Jessica doesn't like competition. and she definitely doesn't like anyone who might threaten her position as the smartest. Most organized person in our class. Maya stared across the cafeteria at Jessica's table, where the girl was already deep in conversation with her friends, probably discussing what had just happened. Maya realized with growing dread that her strategy of staying invisible had completely backfired. Instead of avoiding attention, she'd managed to paint a target on her back. That afternoon, Maya walked to her locker to find a note that had been slipped through the vents. In neat handwriting, someone had written, "Maybe try being less perfect. Some of us have been here longer." Maya crumpled the note and threw it away, but the message was clear. Somehow, her academic success and organized approach to school had been interpreted as arrogance and superiority. The very qualities that had helped her succeed at other schools were now being used against her. As she walked to her mom's car that afternoon, Maya realized that her careful strategy for navigating Lincoln High had completely unraveled. The misunderstanding that had started with a chemistry test score had snowballed into something much bigger, and she wasn't sure how to fix it without compromising who she was. What worried her most was that she genuinely hadn't done anything wrong. She'd been polite, worked hard, and tried to be helpful. But in the complex social ecosystem of high school, even good intentions could be twisted into weapons against you. Maya spent the weekend wondering if she should tell her parents what was happening, but she didn't want to worry them when they were still settling into their new jobs and new life. She'd handled difficult social situations before, and she told herself she could handle this one too. What she didn't know was that Jessica Chen had spent the weekend making phone calls and sending texts, carefully building a narrative about the new girl who thought she was better than everyone else. By Monday morning, Maya would walk into a very different Lincoln High than the one she'd been getting used to. Monday morning felt different the moment Maya walked through the school doors. She couldn't put her finger on exactly what had changed, but the energy in the hallways seemed charged with something that made her nervous. Students who had been neutral toward her just last week now seemed to look right through her, and conversations had a way of stopping abruptly when she passed by. In her first period English class, Maya noticed that the seat next to her, usually occupied by a friendly girl named Zoe, remained empty even though Zoe was present and sitting across the room. When Mrs. Williams assigned partner work, Maya found herself without a partner until the teacher had to assign her to work with Kevin, who seemed reluctant and kept checking his phone instead of participating in their discussion. "Kevin, is everything okay?" Maya asked during a lull in their conversation about the assigned reading. "Yeah, fine," he said without looking up from his phone. "Look, let's just get through this assignment, okay?" Maya felt stung by his dismissive tone, but she focused on completing their work. She'd dealt with unfriendly classmates before and knew that sometimes people just had bad days. But as the morning progressed, it became clear that this wasn't about individual bad days. In chemistry class, her usual lab partner, David, requested to work alone. When Maya approached Mr. Peterson to ask about the sudden change, David spoke up before she could. "I just think I work better on my own," David said, not meeting her eyes. Mr. Peterson looked confused but allowed the change. Maya spent the lab period working by herself, acutely aware that she was the only student without a partner. During lunch, Maya found Riley in their usual spot in the library. Riley looked up from her art sketchbook with a worried expression. "Maya, we need to talk," Riley said, closing her sketchbook and leaning forward. "What's going on?" Maya asked, though she was pretty sure she didn't want to know the answer. "Jessica's been busy this weekend," Riley said quietly. "She's been telling people that you complained about the academic level here being too easy, and that you said the other students at Lincoln weren't as smart as the kids at your old school." Maya felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. "That's completely untrue. I never said anything like that." "I know you didn't, but that's what people are hearing. She's also saying that you told Brooke that her ideas for the group project weren't good enough, and that you basically took over their meeting." "Riley, you know that's not what happened. I was trying to help organize the project." "I believe you," Riley said, "but Jessica's version of events is spreading fast, and she's got people convinced that you think you're better than everyone here." Maya put her head in her hands. This was worse than she'd imagined. "What am I supposed to do? How do I fight rumors that aren't even true?" "I don't know," Riley admitted. "Jessica's really good at this kind of thing. She never says anything that's technically mean, so teachers can't really do anything about it, but she knows how to plant ideas in people's heads." The conversation was interrupted when two girls from Maya's history class walked by their table. One of them looked directly at Maya and said loudly enough for her to hear, "Some people really need to learn some humility." Maya's cheeks burned with embarrassment and anger. She'd spent 3 weeks trying to fit in, being careful not to stand out or cause problems, and somehow she'd still ended up as the target of school gossip. The afternoon brought new humiliations. In her history class, when Maya raised her hand to answer a question about the Revolutionary War, a topic she was passionate about because of her family's military background, she heard several students sigh audibly. One girl even rolled her eyes so dramatically that other students noticed and giggled. Mr. Garcia, the history teacher, called on Maya anyway. She gave a thoughtful answer about the strategic importance of the Battle of Saratoga, drawing on knowledge she'd gained from visiting historical sites with her father. "Excellent analysis, Maya," Mr. Garcia said. "That's exactly the kind of critical thinking I'm looking for." But instead of feeling proud of her contribution, Maya felt the weight of dozens of eyes on her, and she could practically hear the whispers that would follow her out of class. After school, Maya was walking to her locker when she overheard a conversation that stopped her in her tracks. Jessica was talking to a group of students near the main entrance, and Maya's name came up clearly. "I tried to be nice to her," Jessica was saying. "I even went over to introduce myself, but she was so cold, like she couldn't be bothered to talk to us regular students. I heard she told someone that Lincoln High was beneath her academic level," another voice added. "That doesn't surprise me," Jessica continued. "She acts like she's doing us all a favor by being here. Like we should be grateful that someone so smart decided to grace us with her presence." Maya ducked behind a bank of lockers, her heart pounding. The lies were getting more elaborate and more hurtful, and she was powerless to stop them. Worse, she could hear in the voices of Jessica's audience that they were believing every word. That evening at dinner, Maya's parents noticed she was quieter than usual. Her mom, who worked as a nurse and was good at reading people, asked if everything was okay at school. "It's fine," Maya said, pushing food around on her plate, just adjusting to the different teaching styles. Her dad, still in his military uniform from work, studied her face. "You sure? You look like something's bothering you." Maya considered telling them what was happening, but she could see how tired they both were. Her mom was working long shifts at the hospital, trying to prove herself at a new job, and her dad was dealing with the stress of a new command position. "They didn't need her high school drama on top of everything else, I'm sure," she said. "Just homework stress." But alone in her room later that night, Maya felt the full weight of her situation. She'd been at Lincoln High for less than a month, and somehow she'd managed to become the school's most disliked student. The unfairness of it made her angry, but the helplessness made her want to cry. She thought about all the friends she'd left behind at her previous schools. At her last school in Colorado, she'd been part of a close-knit group that appreciated her intelligence and organization skills. Her friends there had never made her feel bad for being good at school or for taking projects seriously. Maya pulled out her phone and scrolled through old photos from Colorado. There she was with her friend Alex at the science fair, both of them grinning proudly next to their winning project. There was another photo from a group study session where 5 of them had crammed for their AP exams together, making goofy faces at the camera during a break. Those friends had known the real Maya, someone who was smart and organized, yes, but also funny and loyal and kind. They'd never twisted her academic success into evidence of arrogance or interpreted her helpful suggestions as attempts to control people. The contrast with her current situation was stark and painful. At Lincoln High, every positive quality she possessed was being reframed as a negative trait. Her intelligence became arrogance, her organization became controlling behavior, and her military family's emphasis on excellence became evidence that she looked down on others. Maya realized that she was facing a choice. She could try to change herself to fit what Jessica and her followers wanted, become less engaged in class, stop offering to help with group projects, maybe even deliberately perform worse on tests to avoid standing out. Or she could find a way to show people who she really was, beyond the rumors and misunderstandings that were defining her reputation. The problem was that Maya wasn't sure how to do the second option without making things worse. Every time she'd tried to be friendly or helpful, it had somehow been twisted against her. And now that Jessica had successfully painted her as arrogant and superior, anything Maya did would be viewed through that lens. As she got ready for bed, Maya made a decision that surprised even her. She was done trying to stay invisible, and she was done letting other people control the narrative about who she was. If she was going to be at Lincoln High for the next 2 years, she needed to find a way to change the story. She didn't know exactly how she was going to do it yet, but Maya had learned something important during her years of moving from school to school. Sometimes the only way to solve a problem was to face it head on, even when that felt scary and uncertain. Tomorrow, she decided, she would start fighting back. Not with the same petty tactics that Jessica was using, but with something more powerful, the truth about who she really was. Maya fell asleep that night with a plan beginning to form in her mind. It would require courage she wasn't sure she possessed, and it would mean taking risks that could backfire spectacularly. But for the first time since the rumors started, she felt like she had some control over her situation. What Maya didn't know was that her decision to stop hiding would set in motion a series of events that would change not just her own experience at Lincoln High, but the entire social dynamic of her class. Maya woke up Tuesday morning with a sense of determination she hadn't felt in weeks. She'd spent half the night thinking about her situation, and she'd come to an important realization. Hiding from the problem wasn't going to make it go away. If anything, her silence was allowing Jessica's version of events to become the accepted truth. She dressed carefully that morning, choosing clothes that made her feel confident, a navy blue sweater her grandmother had given her and her favorite jeans. As she walked through the school hallways, Maya held her head high, instead of staring at the floor like she'd been doing for days. Her first opportunity came in English class during a discussion about character motivation in their current novel. Mrs. Williams was asking students to analyze why the main character had made a controversial decision, and several students had offered surface-level answers. Maya raised her hand, something she'd been avoiding since the rumors started. "Maya," Mrs. Williams said, looking pleased to see her participate again. "I think the character's decision makes sense when you consider her background," Maya said clearly. She grew up in a military family, so she's used to making sacrifices for the greater good, even when it means personal loss. Several students turned to look at her, and Maya saw Kevin whisper something to the girl next to him. But Maya continued, drawing on her own experience as a military kid to explain the character's mindset. When you move around a lot, you learn that sometimes you have to give up what you want for what your family needs. The character is applying that same logic to her relationship. She's willing to sacrifice her happiness because she believes it will protect the people she cares about. Mrs. Williams nodded thoughtfully. "That's an insightful connection, Maya. I hadn't considered how the character's military background might influence her decision-making process." After class, Maya felt a small spark of satisfaction. She'd reminded herself, and anyone who was listening, that her academic contributions came from genuine understanding, not from showing off. But the real test came at lunch. Instead of hiding in the library like she'd been doing, Maya walked into the cafeteria with purpose. She spotted a table where 3 students were sitting, kids she'd noticed before but never really talked to. One was Alex, a quiet boy who always had a book with him. Another was Priya, a girl who wore vintage band t-shirts and had paint under her fingernails. The third was Danny, who used a wheelchair and was known for his quick wit. Maya approached their table with her lunch tray, her heart beating fast but her resolve firm. "Hi," she said. "I'm Maya. Would it be okay if I sat here?" The 3 students looked up in surprise. Maya knew they were probably wondering why the girl everyone was talking about wanted to sit with them. "Sure," Priya said after a moment, moving her art supplies to make room. Maya sat down and unwrapped her sandwich, trying to think of how to start a normal conversation after weeks of isolation. "What are you reading?" she asked Alex, nodding toward the paperback novel beside his lunch. "Science fiction," Alex said. "It's about a space colony that has to rebuild civilization after Earth gets destroyed." "That sounds cool." "Is it part of a series?" Alex's eyes lit up. "Yeah, it's the 3rd book. The world building is incredible. The author created this whole political system based on resource scarcity and..." As Alex enthusiastically explained the plot, Maya found herself genuinely interested. She asked questions and made comments that showed she was really listening, not just being polite. Priya joined the conversation when Maya noticed her sketchbook and asked about her artwork. It turned out Priya was designing posters for the upcoming school play, and she was struggling with the layout. "Have you tried putting the text at an angle?" Maya suggested, looking at the sketch. "Sometimes diagonal lines create more visual interest than straight horizontal text." "Actually, that might work," Priya said, turning the paper to see how it would look. "I've been staring at this for so long I couldn't see other possibilities." Danny contributed his own observations about the design, and soon all four of them were collaborating on improving the poster layout. Maya felt something she hadn't experienced in weeks, the simple pleasure of connecting with people who appreciated her ideas instead of resenting them. Their conversation was interrupted when Jessica appeared at their table with two of her friends. "Well, this is interesting," Jessica said, looking down at Maya with that familiar cold smile. "Making new friends?" Maya looked up calmly. "Just having lunch." "Of course you are," Jessica said. "It's nice that you found people who appreciate your unique perspective." There was something in Jessica's tone that suggested she thought Maya had been relegated to sitting with the weird kids as punishment. Maya felt a flash of anger on behalf of her new lunch companions, who had shown her more genuine kindness in 20 minutes than Jessica's crowd had in 3 weeks. "Actually," Maya said, standing up so she was eye level with Jessica, "I found people who are interesting to talk to. Alex is incredibly knowledgeable about literature, Priya is an amazing artist, and Danny has great insights about everything from politics to pop culture. It's refreshing to have conversations that go deeper than gossip." Jessica's smile faltered slightly. She hadn't expected Maya to respond so directly, or to turn the interaction into what sounded like a criticism of Jessica's own social circle. "How nice for you," Jessica said, but her voice had lost some of its confidence. "It really is," Maya said sincerely. "I'm learning that the best conversations happen when people are more interested in sharing ideas than in tearing each other down." The comment hung in the air between them. Maya hadn't raised her voice or said anything directly confrontational, but everyone at the table, and several nearby tables that had been listening, understood exactly what she was saying. Jessica seemed to realize that she'd lost control of the interaction. She'd come over expecting to find Maya isolated and defensive, but instead she'd found someone who seemed comfortable and confident. "Well," Jessica said, clearly searching for a way to regain the upper hand, "I guess everyone finds their own level eventually." "They do," Maya agreed, "and I'm pretty happy with mine." After Jessica and her friends walked away, Danny let out a low whistle. "Okay, that was impressive," he said. "I've never seen anyone handle Jessica like that." "What do you mean?" Maya asked, sitting back down. "You didn't get defensive or mean," Priya explained. "You just stated facts in a way that made her look petty for even starting the conversation." Maya felt a surge of confidence. For weeks she'd been letting Jessica control every interaction between them, but this time, Maya had stayed true to herself while refusing to be intimidated. Word of the cafeteria interaction spread quickly through the school. By the end of the day, Maya could sense that something had shifted. Some students still avoided her, clearly still believing Jessica's version of events, but others seemed curious about the girl who had calmly stood up to the most popular student in school. In her last period chemistry class, something unexpected happened. David, who had requested to work alone just the day before, approached her before the lab began. "Hey, Maya," he said, looking a little embarrassed. "I was wondering if you wanted to be lab partners again. I realized I actually learned more when we worked together." "Sure," Maya said simply, not making a big deal about his change of heart. During the lab, David seemed more relaxed than he had in days. As they worked on their experiment, he finally addressed what had been happening. "Look, I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "I heard some stuff about you, and I let it affect how I treated you. But watching you in class and seeing how you handled that thing with Jessica today, I think I misjudged the situation." "What made you change your mind?" Maya asked as she carefully measured chemicals for their solution. "Honestly, the way you talked to Alex, Priya, and Danny at lunch. I could see from across the cafeteria that you were really listening to them, asking genuine questions about their interests. That's not how someone acts when they think they're better than everyone else." Maya felt a warm feeling spread through her chest. Maybe her decision to stop hiding was starting to pay off. After school, as Maya walked to meet her mom in the pickup line, Riley caught up with her. "I heard about lunch," Riley said with a grin, "and chemistry class. And basically every class where people saw you being your actual self instead of trying to stay invisible. Word travels fast around here, Maya said. It does, and the word is that maybe everyone jumped to conclusions about the new girl. Maya felt hopeful for the first time in weeks. She wasn't naive. She knew that changing people's minds would take time, and that Jessica probably wasn't going to give up her campaign easily. But today had shown her something important. When she stopped trying to be someone else and started being genuinely herself, curious, thoughtful, and kind, people responded to that authenticity. The students who mattered, the ones worth being friends with, could see the difference between confidence and arrogance, between being helpful and being controlling. As her mom's car pulled up, Maya realized that she'd learned something valuable about strength. It wasn't about fighting back with the same weapons someone used against you. Sometimes the strongest thing you could do was simply refuse to become smaller to make other people more comfortable. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and Maya knew that some students would continue to believe Jessica's narrative about her. But tonight, for the first time since the rumors started, Maya felt like herself again, and that she was beginning to understand was the foundation for everything else she wanted to build at Lincoln High. 3 weeks after Maya's confrontation with Jessica in the cafeteria, Lincoln High felt like a completely different place. The change hadn't happened overnight, but Maya could feel the shift in how people looked at her, talked to her, and included her in their daily school life. It started with small things. David continued being her lab partner, and actually started asking for her help with chemistry concepts he didn't understand. Alex began saving her a seat at their lunch table and would eagerly tell her about whatever book he was reading. Priya had finished the poster design with Maya's suggestions and asked her to help with future art projects, but the real change came when Maya stopped trying to prove she wasn't arrogant and started simply being helpful in ways that mattered to people. The opportunity came during a particularly frustrating day in Mr. Garcia's history class. The class was struggling with a complex essay assignment about the causes of World War I, and Maya could see that several students were genuinely confused about how to organize their thoughts. After class, instead of rushing to her next period, Maya approached Tommy, a student she'd noticed frantically erasing and rewriting his outline during the lesson. "Hey Tommy," she said, "that essay assignment is pretty tough. Are you feeling okay about it?" Tommy looked up, surprised that anyone had noticed his struggle. "Honestly, I have no idea how to start. Mr. Garcia wants us to analyze multiple causes, but I don't know how to organize all the information. Would you like some help? I've done a lot of these types of analytical essays at my other schools." Tommy hesitated. Maya could see him weighing whether accepting help from her would somehow prove Jessica's point about Maya thinking she was smarter than everyone else. "I'm not trying to do your work for you," Maya added quickly. "I just know some organizational techniques that might help you structure your own ideas." "Okay," Tommy said. "Yeah, that would actually be really helpful." They spent 15 minutes in the hallway with Maya showing Tommy how to create a simple outline that would help him organize his arguments. She didn't give him answers. Instead, she asked questions that helped him think through the material himself. "So if you're arguing that nationalism was one of the main causes," Maya said, "what specific examples from the reading support that point?" "Oh," Tommy said, his face lighting up as he understood. "I could talk about the tensions in the Balkans and how different ethnic groups wanted their own countries." "Exactly. And how does that connect to the other causes you want to discuss?" By the end of their conversation, Tommy had a clear outline and seemed genuinely excited about writing his essay. Word of Maya's helpful tutoring session spread, and soon other students were asking for similar help. Maya found herself staying after school twice a week to help classmates with various subjects. She worked with Alex on his science lab reports, helped Priya understand calculus problems, and even assisted some of Jessica's friends with their English assignments. The tutoring sessions revealed something important about Maya that the rumor mill had completely missed. She was patient, encouraging, and genuinely wanted other people to succeed. When Kevin struggled with a chemistry concept, Maya didn't make him feel stupid. When Brooke needed help organizing her history notes, Maya didn't take over the project. She taught Brooke techniques she could use on her own. "You know," Brooke said one afternoon as Maya helped her prepare for a test, "I owe you an apology. I said some things about you that weren't fair." Maya looked up from the study guide they were reviewing. "What do you mean?" "The group project thing. I told people you were trying to control everything, but looking back, You were just trying to help us get organized. I was stressed about other stuff and I took it out on you. I appreciate you saying that, Maya said. But I also learned something from that experience. I need to be better at reading the room and making sure everyone feels included in planning, not just hearing their own ideas. Brooke seemed surprised by Maya's response. You're not going to tell me I was completely wrong? You weren't completely wrong. I did take charge pretty quickly without really getting everyone's input first. I've done a lot of group projects, so organization comes naturally to me, but that doesn't mean my way is the only way. This conversation, like many others Maya was having, revealed her true character. She was confident in her abilities, but she was also willing to listen to feedback and adjust her approach. She wanted to help people, but she also respected their autonomy and intelligence. The real test of Maya's growth came in November when the school announced that budget cuts might eliminate several programs, including the art department and the tutoring center that helped struggling students. Maya watched as students reacted with anger and frustration. Alex was devastated because the art program was where Priya felt most confident and creative. Danny was worried about losing the tutoring center, which had helped him maintain his grades despite missing school for medical appointments. While other students complained about the unfairness of the cuts, Maya did something different. She spent her weekend researching similar situations at other schools and looking into possible solutions. On Monday, she approached Mr. Garcia with a proposal. I've been thinking about the budget cuts, she said. What if we organized a student committee to research alternatives and present them to the school board? Mr. Garcia raised an eyebrow. That's a significant undertaking, Maya. It would require a lot of research and organization. I know. But I think if we can show concrete examples of how other schools have solved similar problems, we might be able to change their minds. And you'd be willing to lead this committee? Maya hesitated. She was still rebuilding her reputation at Lincoln High, and taking on such a visible leadership role felt risky. But she thought about Priya's face when she'd heard about the potential art program cuts, and Alex's disappointment about losing the tutoring center. Yes, she said, I think I would. Word spread quickly that Maya was organizing a committee to fight the budget cuts. Students who had barely spoken to her since the rumors started began approaching her to volunteer. Even some of Jessica's friends asked how they could help. The committee meetings revealed Maya's true leadership style. She didn't dominate the discussions or dismiss other people's ideas. Instead, she helped facilitate conversations where everyone's voice was heard. She assigned tasks based on people's strengths and interests, and she made sure to give credit to others for their contributions. Tommy proved to be excellent at research. Priya designed compelling visual presentations. Danny wrote persuasive arguments, and Alex found examples of successful programs at other schools. Even Jessica eventually joined the committee, initially seeming skeptical but gradually becoming engaged in the work. I have to admit, Jessica said during one meeting, I didn't expect this to be so collaborative. What do you mean? Maya asked. I thought you'd just tell everyone what to do and take all the credit, but you're actually listening to people's ideas and building on them. Maya smiled. My dad always told me that real leadership isn't about being the smartest person in the room. It's about helping everyone else be their best. The committee's presentation to the school board was a success. They'd found examples of schools that had saved money through community partnerships, volunteer programs, and creative fundraising. They'd surveyed students and parents to demonstrate community support for the threatened programs. Most importantly, they'd shown that students could be part of the solution, not just victims of budget problems. The school board voted to maintain the art program and tutoring center, and they praised the students for their mature and thoughtful approach to addressing the issue. After the meeting, Maya found herself surrounded by classmates who wanted to thank her for organizing the effort. But what meant the most to her was a quiet conversation with Jessica afterward. I owe you an apology, Jessica said as they walked out of the school board meeting together. For what? For the rumors. For trying to make you look bad when you first got here. I felt threatened by you, and instead of getting to know you, I decided you were competition. Maya was quiet for a moment. Why did you feel threatened? Because you're good at things that I pride myself on being good at. Academics, organization, leadership. And you made it look effortless. I was afraid people would start looking to you instead of me. Jessica, Maya said, there's room for more than one leader at this school. Actually, we probably need more leaders, not fewer. I'm starting to realize that, Jessica said. Watching you with the committee, you brought out the best in people instead of trying to compete with them. That's something I need to learn. By the end of November, Maya's reputation at Lincoln High had completely transformed. She was known as someone who was smart but not condescending, organized but not controlling, and confident but not arrogant. Students sought her out for help with projects and problems, and teachers began asking her to take on leadership roles in various activities. Most importantly, Maya had found her true friend group. Alex, Priya, Danny, and several others from the budget committee had become close friends who appreciated her for exactly who she was. They studied together, hung out on weekends, and supported each other through the normal ups and downs of teenage life. On a Friday afternoon in December, Maya sat in the cafeteria with her friends, helping Alex plan a book club and listening to Priya describe her latest art project. She looked around the table at these people who had become so important to her, and she felt a deep sense of gratitude. Her phone buzzed with a text from her friend back in Colorado. "How's the new school going? Still missing us?" Maya thought about how to respond. She did miss her Colorado friends, but Lincoln High had become something she never expected. Home. She texted back, "It was rough at first, but I found my people. And I think I found myself too." That evening, as Maya helped her mom prepare dinner, her mom noticed how different she seemed from those first difficult weeks at Lincoln High. "You seem happy," her mom observed. "I am," Maya said. "It took a while to figure things out, but I think I learned something important." "What's that?" "Real strength isn't about proving you're better than other people. It's about using your abilities to help everyone succeed together." Maya's mom smiled. "That sounds like something your father would say." "It is, and I finally understand what he meant." As Maya looked back on her first few months at Lincoln High, she realized that the rumor and misunderstandings had actually been a gift in disguise. They'd forced her to examine her own behavior and learn the difference between confidence and arrogance, between leadership and control. More importantly, they'd taught her that true strength came not from being perfect or being better than others, but from being authentically herself while helping others be their best selves too. That was a lesson that would serve her well, not just for the rest of high school but for the rest of her life.